Hey, that was good.
Yay.
I like that.
Yay, yeah, thanks, Maggie. Sarah, Rex, questions for Maggie?
Maggie, you said something earlier about rejection.
Yeah.
You had a term for it, rejection something.
Sensitivity,
rejection,
Sensitivity.
just sensitivity.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good, and it reminded me of a process of a book I read called The Seven Primal Questions. Have you heard of that book?
Oh, tell
Mike
us.
Foster? Is it Mike Foster? Who's
Yeah, Mike Foster who did that, and it kind of reminded me that it might be something you want to check out that could maybe even you could work into some of what you do, because he talks about seven primal questions that I think everybody has, and when we hear a no to it, then we kind of shut down and turn off and do things completely differently. And I read it and I just thought it was very fascinating because I kind of realized some of my questions and what causes issues in my relationship. So
Okay.
tossing that out there.
don't we all have that rejection sensitivity?
Yeah.
I think we all have it to some degree, but for some people, it really is this visceral experience that it's almost like, when you're in traffic and you're cut off and you see red and you're like just flooded. Some people have that when they hear a no, and it could be a very innocent, loving no, but it just shuts them down to a greater degree. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
And so what's the key to do with that? I guess, Maggie, what's the key then?
I think the first key is to just know that that's a thing that exists. It helps you soften your yeses or your nos, depending if you're the partner who has it or the partner who doesn't. So the first thing is just, I always say with awareness, we create authority. With awareness, we can then decide what we want to do and how we handle it. And then what is my relationship with that? If my brain is wired a certain way, right, it's a problem I manage. It's not a problem I solve. So it's like, how do I want to manage that happens sometimes? So I have a little bit of it. I don't have it to the degree that it shuts me down completely, but I certainly have like that moment. And I just like, wait, what am I making that mean? Could it mean something else? Let me check. And then sometimes I'll ask the person, or I'll take a beat and I'll say, this person has shown me they love me 54,000 ways. Why don't I just take a beat? And so how I manage it becomes really important.
I have to agree. I think for men, intimacy, saying no to intimacy can be a huge rejection. And just in my marriage, sometimes we don't want to be intimate. I feel dejected and I'm not good enough and all these wonderful things. And I caught myself the other day. I realized my wife was having this dream where we couldn't be together, and it was very distressing for her. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. Like, that's a terrible dream. I don't want her to have it. But it meant so much to me that like, oh no, she loves me. Like her nightmare is not being with me. And that was a huge thing for me to get over some of those feelings of rejection I've had in the past.
It's so nice. So honest of you. Yeah.
Yeah. I like what Liz, I agree with Liz, like generosity is the highest form of love. I thought that was really cool what you said there.
Maggie's statement. I love it.
Yeah. What advice do you have for men to help their wives embrace your therapy or your approach?
Ooh. My advice.
Do you ever hear from men, Maggie? Do you ever hear from men?
Sometimes the work that I do, a lot of times, many of my clients, their husbands become my biggest fan. So the joke on the coaching session is like, what would Maggie say about that? Because I'm coaching them to be kinder and to be generous and to learn to manage their emotions and stuff like that. So sometimes I hear from my clients, and sometimes a couple of times because I send emails and stuff, people will email me back and say, I understand my wife in a different way because you explained something or something like that. My advice for men is not even to embrace the work. It's to remember to prioritize the relationship and to follow whatever thread that leads. Because when you're prioritizing it, you get curious about what your wife's experience is. Sometimes, and the women that I work with specifically, they want a deeper connection. It's not that they don't love their husbands, it's that they want more than what they're having with their husbands. And they're not totally sure whether their husband's open to that or not. And so if a husband shows up with curiosity and just like, hey, what's coming up for you? Why does this matter to you? What's important to you about this? even if they don't want the exact same thing looking the exact same way, they can create connection around what they do want together and how they can collaborate for things that are important to both of them. So I think just with prioritization, you get all the other parts.
I think that's well said, because once you prioritize it, you do get curious, and that's what leads to better outcomes. Yeah. Because then you have to be empathetic. You know, you have to look at it from your wife's perspective, like, oh, okay, well, what is her experience? What would make this wonderful for her?
Yeah, and I think for both of us, like, we often lead with our wounds. So instead of being empathetic, we're like wounded because they disappointed us or whatever. And if we can just have a moment where we are not leading with our wounds and where we're leading with, like, I love this person, I married this person for a reason, that immediately shifts the energy in a more constructive direction where both of you get more of what you want.
That's well said. Yeah, because that's a really good metaphor, because we really are like, oh, look at this wound. Look what you did. Look what you did. And rather than do that, do it. Yeah, that's well said, Maggie.
Thank you.
I like that.
Sarah, what about you? Questions for May?
Yeah, I loved when you talked about processing grief.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that is so powerful. And I cannot think of one marriage or life that we don't go through that.
Yeah. To me, it's those conversations that we're not having. Like, what are the conversations we're not having, and how can we create spaces to have them? Which I love podcasts like this, programs like the different coaching things that we all do, because we get to have these conversations that it's not a typical thing. Even when you're learning marriage skills or when you're learning communication skills, it's like, wait, we all have losses, sometimes big losses, sometimes small losses. And what's the role of that loss in my love for this person? I just feel like there's a part of us that gets ignored, and then that grief can become anger and resentment and other very destructive emotions when it's left ignored or unprocessed or put aside or suppressed.
So can you talk a bit about what that looks like pragmatically? Like, what if someone's like, okay, I get that, but how do I really do it?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Sometimes it's as simple as journaling or talking to a friend or talking to a therapist or a coach or doing a workshop or anything where you just say, what am I sad about? What did I think was going to happen when I got married? And what was I disappointed by? Because a couple of years have passed and that never came to fruition. Am I still sad about it? Am I holding on to it? Am I expecting my partner to do something that they're never going to do? And it's like, oh, I can be sad that they're never going to do that. And I can look for the things they do, and I can spend more time enjoying and appreciating those things. So sometimes it could be as simple as just writing in a journal and just putting on a sheet of paper and just being with it. So often, whenever we meet an emotion, just the act of allowing it to be with us dissipates it. And the example I like to give is babies. So we've all seen a baby be happy and sad and angry and crying and then squealing with joy in like a 30-minute period. We are born equipped and knowing how to process and feel a feeling and let it go. We just get deconditioned out of that. So for everyone listening, if you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that, I have to learn. No, we can just say, you know what? I'm just going to be sad about that today. And whatever guides you, you might have an inspiration to do something or not do something. That's what I recommend.
I have to agree. That is because I've done that kind of thing where I've just accepted it. Oh gosh, that's sad. That's really bad. Oh well, and it's a way for me to grieve it. And I like to say, it probably sounds weird, but I bury it in a sense. You're like, okay, that was a thing. It's there, and now it's gone, and I can move on.
Ah, and even when we bury it, it's like it's there. It has a place. I think a displaced emotion is very dangerous because it takes over all the other ones. But when it has a place, you can visit it. If you need to grieve it again, you can bring in some flowers. Just the idea of burying it can be really beautiful because then you're in relationship with it instead of it just wreaking havoc everywhere, trying to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little gremlin running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good, Maggie. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Maggie, you're such a great example of treating a husband. I don't know. I think probably many of your clients are thinking, "Oh, I need to do more of that." Do you mind sharing just a little bit more about your husband? You said something earlier about. I refer to him as I always say I have a crush on my husband.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about those nuances of how you respond to him and talk about him.
I mean, I think I got married a little bit older, so I was in my 30s when I got married. And I have never had a day that I've taken that man for granted. And that's just my natural inclination. One of the things I think about a lot as I'm coaching people is, why am I happy? Like, we've been together 17 years. We love each other, have a great relationship. I always say, I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Right. And he chuckles. And
at night when you go to bed, you mean? I can't wait to see them.
I'm like, I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. And so I ask myself, why do we get along? Like, why is that?
Yeah.
And so part of it, I think, is our natural just inclination. And then part of it is then figuring out how to do that on purpose. So we talk about things when we're upset about something, we face things with love or with respect. When Dave said earlier, you can be angry or upset and still be kind. I literally have this very vivid memory of crying and being so upset. I was upset and hurt. I was all the cocktail of emotions, and looking at my husband and saying, I love you so much, but I'm so upset right now. Right. Even feeling all of that. So we do stuff like that, and that helps us. And then the other thing we do is we did it organically, and now we do it on purpose. We laugh about things other couples argue over. But we used to just do it just organically. And now, like, no, you need to keep doing that. So it's not that we don't have annoying traits, right? So this is the example I like to give is, I grew up with a single mom, and for some reason I use 5 cups a day. I have a cup for milk, a cup for soda, a cup for tea, like 5 cups. My husband grew up with 2 brothers, and they had their identified cup that belonged to them. And that was the only cup, and that was one. And so he'll come home and there'll be 5 cups in the sink. He's like, oh, my wife was home today. And another couple could very easily, like, all the things about it. And we just crack jokes and be silly. And my husband will put away anything on any table anytime. So I'll take out a fork. I'll be doing something, and I'll look again. The fork is gone. Always, anytime, for everything. And of course, a person could get mad about that. We joke about it incessantly. I'm like, I need the fork police. I need some protective custody for my forks. We just make it, whatever. So humor is also something we turn to a lot. And when we can't turn to humor, that's when we figure out what's going on in the relationship that humor is not available. Then you know what to bring to your coaching session or your workshop or whatever it is that you're doing, because that's the thing that's in the way. That's my very convoluted answer to your question.
Those are some of my favorite things you write about, though, Maggie, or you and your husband. I love those ideas, suggestions that may not come to me, but it's like, oh, I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so good.
You're very inspiring.
So glad.
There's a funny meme that reminds me of what Maggie just said. I just saw it the other day, where this woman's walking through the house and saying funny, beautiful ways my husband lets me know he's been there. And there's like cups left on the table, or, something left out that he's used, clothes on the floor. And she just looks at it and laughs or goes, oh, my dear heart, but making light of the little annoying things that our other spouse may do.
Yeah, the hair in the shower.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, did you see that? The hair in the shower, and they're like, oh.
Yes. Seeing it as a beautiful thing rather than an annoying thing, like Maggie was saying.
Yeah.
I'm definitely guilty of that. I am guilty for sure.
We've heard those stories, right? Like in particular, I think of a woman who would always complain about her husband's socks and underwear on the floor. And then, she goes on to tell a story of how he suddenly passed away. And how she'd give anything to be able to see those socks and underwear on the floor. Right? So it is so true. Life is so short and unexpected. And what am I going to complain about? And whatever I focus on grows. Maggie, you were saying something about that. You'll find the evidence of whatever you believe.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, look for the evidence of love.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, with that, I'm going to cut it right here.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.